Commander Susan Walsh looked out the window of her small office on the UES Defiant. Stars stretched into the distance. 5 years had passed since humans met the Zyraxians. 5 years of what seemed like friendship between the two species. Susan did not trust them. Something in their 6 eyes and the way they moved their forearms made her skin crawl. But she kept these thoughts to herself. The treaty had helped humans. The Zyraxians gave them faster-than-light travel. Humans gave the aliens their biological research in return. Susan read the treaty again on her screen. She had read it many times before. Each time she felt more uneasy. The Zyraxians had been too eager to share their technology. They asked too many questions about Earth's defenses. They wanted too much information about how many humans lived on each colony. A knock at her door made her look up. "Come in," she said. Lieutenant Alan Carter walked in. His face was tight with worry. He held a small data drive in his hand like it might explode. "Commander, I need to show you something," he said. His voice was low and quick. "I don't think I should have sent this through the normal channels." Susan pointed to the chair across from her desk. Alan sat down and pushed the data drive across to her. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "I broke into their communications," Alan said. "The Zyraxians. It wasn't easy. They use a quantum encryption that changes every few seconds." Susan raised her eyebrows. Breaking into alien communications was not allowed under the treaty. But she said nothing and plugged the drive into her computer. "I started looking because of those ships," Alan continued. "The ones they said were trade vessels. They have weapon signatures our sensors can't normally detect. I created a new program to look deeper." Susan's screen filled with strange symbols. Zyraxian writing. Next to it was Alan's translation. "Attack. Begins at 0 point. All 7 human colonies targeted simultaneously. Primary objective, secure biological specimens. Secondary objective, resource acquisition. Earth defenses calculated at 27% effectiveness against our technology. Expected resistance time, below 40 Earth hours." Susan read it twice. Her hands grew cold. "There's more," Alan said. "They've planted spies in our government. They know our defense codes. They know where our ships are stationed." Susan stood up. "When was this sent?" 3 days ago. From their high command to all military vessels. And when is 0 point? Alan looked down at his hands. "That's the problem. I don't know exactly, but based on their ship movements, I think it's soon. Very soon." Susan walked around her desk and headed for the door. "We need to talk to Admiral Moss." They walked quickly through the ship. Crew members nodded as they passed. None of them knew what Susan and Alan had just discovered. None of them knew that the aliens who had seemed so helpful were planning to attack, to harvest humans like crops. Admiral Frank Moss was in the ship's meeting room, with 3 other officers. They were looking at plans for a new space station, another joint project with the Zyraxians. "Admiral, we need to speak with you," Susan said. "In private." Moss frowned. He was an old-school military man with gray hair cut short. He did not like having his meetings interrupted. "Can it wait, Commander Walsh?" "No, sir. It cannot." Something in her voice made him nod. He dismissed the other officers and waited until the door closed behind them. "This better be good," he said. Susan nodded to Alan, who set up his computer and showed the Admiral what they had found. Moss read the translated messages with a deep frown. "This is serious," he said when he finished. If true," Susan felt anger rise in her chest. "Sir, these are their own words. They could be talking about military exercises, or this could be a test to see if we're spying on them." Moss stood up and paced the room. "The Zyraxians have been good allies. They've shared technology that would have taken us centuries to develop on our own. Because they want us dependent on them," Susan argued. "They're studying us, Admiral, learning our weaknesses." Moss shook his head. "We need more proof before I report this to Earth Command. Do you know what kind of panic this would cause? The political fallout?" Susan leaned forward. Sir, with respect, the Zyraxians are planning to attack all 7 human colonies. They're going to kill or capture our people. Politics doesn't matter if we're all dead. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he sighed. What do you propose, Commander? A small team, off the books. The Zyraxian flagship will be at the diplomatic conference next week. We can get on board, find more proof of their plans. That's a serious breach of the treaty, Moss said. They breached it first, Susan replied. Moss looked at her hard, then at Alan. If you're wrong about this, it's both your careers, and mine too, probably. And if we're right and do nothing, it's everyone's lives, Susan said. The Admiral nodded, slowly. You have 3 days to prepare, small team only. No official record of the mission. Get me proof I can take to command. Yes, sir, Susan said. Who else do you need? Susan thought for a moment. Grace Patterson from Weapons, and Dr. William Reeves. He understands their culture better than anyone. Make it happen, Moss said. And Walsh, be careful. If they are planning what you think they are, they won't hesitate to kill you if you're caught. Susan nodded. I understand the risk. Back in her quarters, Susan sent secure messages to Grace and William. While she waited for them to arrive, she looked again at the Zyraxian message. The words biological specimens made her skin crawl. That's all humans were to them. Not allies, not friends. Just specimens to be collected. William arrived first. The scientist looked worried when Susan told him why she had called him. I was looking through historical records yesterday, he said. Old star charts from the Zyraxians. There are systems marked as harvested. I thought it meant resources, but what if it meant people? Susan finished his thought. William nodded slowly. What if we're not the first species they've done this to? Grace came in next, her red hair tied back tightly. She listened to Susan's explanation with a stony face. So we're going to sneak onto their ship? She asked when Susan finished. Past their security? Yes, Susan said. Can you get us weapons they won't detect? Grace smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Oh, I've got some ideas they haven't seen before. Susan looked at her small team. A spy, a scientist, and a weapons expert. Not much against an entire alien armada. But they were smart and they were determined and they were humanity's best chance. The Zyraxian ship Eternal Dominion was huge. It made the largest human ships look like toys. Susan, Alan, William, and Grace stood in a line with the other human guests as they entered the great hall for the diplomatic conference. Everyone was smiling. The humans who didn't know what Susan's team knew were excited about new technology sharing. The Zyraxians were smiling too, but Susan now understood why. They were smiling like people who know they are about to win. Remember the plan, Susan whispered to her team. We split up after the welcome speech. Meet at Point B in 1 hour. The Zyraxian High Ambassador Vexlor approached the human delegation. He had bright blue scales and 6 yellow eyes that blinked in different patterns. 4 long arms extended from his body, each ending in 3-fingered hands. Welcome, friends from Earth, Vexlor said. His voice translator made his words sound almost musical. This gathering marks 5 years of our successful alliance. May the next 5 be even more productive. Susan forced herself to smile. Beside her, William did the same. He had spent years studying Zyraxian culture. Now he saw it all differently. The next 5 minutes might be all we have, Grace muttered under her breath. The welcome ceremony lasted an hour. Speeches from both sides talked about friendship and progress. Susan watched the Zyraxian leaders on the stage. They were good actors. No one would guess they planned to attack every human colony soon. When the formal part ended, guests moved around the great hall to talk and eat. This was when Susan's team made their move. One by one, they slipped away from the main group. Susan took a service corridor that Alan had found on the ship plans. She walked quickly but not too fast. If anyone saw her, she would say she was looking for a bathroom, but no one stopped her. At a junction, she met Alan. He had changed from his formal uniform into a maintenance worker's clothes. We have 30 minutes before the next patrol, he said. William and Grace are waiting at the security door. They moved deeper into the ship. The walls changed from decorated to plain metal. The air smelled different too. Less perfume, more machinery. They were in the real working parts of the ship now, not the pretty areas shown to guests. William and Grace stood by a door marked with Xeraxian symbols. Grace had a small device in her hand. This will disable their alarm system for 2 minutes, she explained. We need to be quick. What's in there? Susan asked. William pointed to the symbols. This means biological research. If they're planning to harvest humans, the evidence will be in there. Grace activated her device. The lights around the door flickered and went dark. Alan used a code he had stolen to open it. Inside was a large laboratory. The room stretched farther than Susan expected. Clear tubes filled with liquid lined the walls. Inside each tube was a body, but not human bodies. Other aliens, species Susan had never seen before. Some looked almost human-like. Others had strange shapes and extra limbs. All were floating, preserved like specimens. What is this place? Grace whispered. William moved to a control panel. He read the Xeraxian writing with a growing look of horror. These are their previous allies, he said. Each one was a species the Xeraxians made contact with, formed treaties with, then harvested. Susan felt cold despite the warm air of the laboratory. How many? 23 different species, William said. Some were wiped out completely, others reduced to pre-technology levels. He looked up. We're supposed to be number 24. Alan had moved to another section of the lab. Commander, you need to see this. On a large screen was a map of the solar system. Earth and all its colonies were marked. Dates and times were written in Xeraxian numbers. This is their attack plan, Alan said. It's scheduled to begin. When? Susan asked. 23 hours from now. Everyone was quiet for a moment. Then Grace spoke. That's sooner than we thought. We need to warn Earth. Not just Earth, William said, looking at another screen. Look at this, it's a report on human defenses. They know everything. Our weapon systems, our codes, our fleet positions. He looked at Susan. How do they know all this? They have a spy, Susan said. Someone high in Earth's government has been helping them. Alan inserted a data drive into the Xeraxian computer. I'm copying everything. We'll sort it out later. Right now we need to get this information back to Admiral Moss. Suddenly an alarm sounded, not in the lab but throughout the ship. A voice spoke in Xeraxian, then switched to English. Attention all Xeraxian crew. Human intruders have been detected in restricted areas. Security teams to sections 12, 14, and 22. All human guests are to be escorted to containment areas. Susan looked at her team. They found us, we need to move now. Where? Grace asked. They'll be guarding all the exits. The shuttle bay, Susan said. If we can steal a shuttle, we can get back to the Defiant. They ran from the laboratory. The corridors were suddenly filled with Xeraxian security teams. Twice they had to hide in side rooms to avoid being seen. They were turning a corner when they met 3 Xeraxian guards. Before Susan could react, Grace fired her specially designed weapon. It sent out a pulse that made the Xeraxians fall to the ground, clutching their heads. What did you do to them? William asked. Sound wave that disrupts their inner ear, Grace explained. They'll be dizzy for about 10 minutes. They ran on. Through a window, Susan saw human diplomatic ships in space near the Eternal Dominion. As she watched, a Xeraxian weapon fired. One of the human ships exploded. They're starting the attack early, she said. They know we discovered their plan. From the ship's speakers, a new voice spoke. Deeper, more commanding. This is Supreme, Commander Calvorox. The human vermin have forced our hand. Begin the cleansing operation immediately. No mercy, no survivors. Susan's team reached the shuttle bay just as more explosions lit up space outside. Human ships were being destroyed, one after another. The diplomats, the crew, everyone who had come in peace, and all killed without warning. The shuttle bay had 2 guards. Alan and Grace took them down with surprise attacks. William ran to a shuttle and started its systems. "I can fly this," he said. "The controls are similar to the simulator I studied." They boarded the small ship. Outside, more human vessels were being destroyed. Susan saw the UES Harmony, Earth's flagship, break apart under Zyraxian fire. "Get us to the Defiant," she told William. "Admiral Moss needs to know what's happening. He needs to warn Earth." The shuttle lifted off as more Zyraxian guards entered the bay. They fired at the shuttle, but the shields held. William guided the ship out into space, away from the battle. Susan looked back at the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship was firing on the helpless human vessels. This was not war. It was slaughter. "They'll pay for this," she said quietly. "Whatever it takes, they'll pay." The shuttle accelerated away from the massacre, carrying the evidence of betrayal. And unknown to Susan, it also carried something that would become humanity's best hope for survival. The stolen Zyraxian shuttle raced through space. William kept it moving in a pattern that made it hard to track. Behind them, the massive Zyraxian ships continued their attack on the human diplomatic vessels. No one was fighting back. No one had expected betrayal. "We need to reach the Defiant," Susan said. "It's our only chance to warn Earth." "If it's still there," Alan said quietly. Susan looked at the data they had stolen. The attack plan was clear. The Zyraxians had ships near, all 7 human colonies. They would strike at the same time using a biological weapon designed to target human DNA. Then they would land and take what they wanted. The shuttle's communication system lit up. A human voice came through. "Unknown vessel, this is UES Defiant. Identify yourself or be fired upon." Susan grabbed the communicator. "This is Commander Walsh, don't shoot. We're in a stolen Zyraxian shuttle. Emergency code Alpha 79. There was a pause. Then Admiral Moss's voice replied, "Walsh? What happened?" "We lost contact with the diplomatic ships. Our sensors show weapons fire. The Zyraxians attacked, sir. They've started their invasion early. All the diplomatic ships are gone." Another pause. Then, "Get to these coordinates. We're hiding in the nebula as you suggested. Approach slowly. We have weapons locked on you." The shuttle changed direction. Soon, the gases of a pink and blue nebula surrounded them. The UES Defiant appeared from behind a cloud of dust. It wasn't alone. 5 other human ships were with it. "You got my message," Susan said when they landed in the Defiant's shuttle bay. Admiral Moss nodded grimly. "Just in time. I pulled every ship I could reach, out of regular patrol routes. Not many believed me, but enough did." His face was hard. "What did you find?" Susan handed him the data drive. "Everything. Their attack plans. The biological weapon they created to kill us. And sir, we're not the first. They've done this before, to other species." In the command center, they watched as reports came in from across human space. The news was all bad. Military bases on Earth were hit first. Major cities followed. The biological weapon spread through the air, killing millions in hours. Mars colony went silent. Then the mining base on Europa. Then the research station on Titan. One by one, humanity's outposts fell. "How many ships do we have left?" Susan asked. 17, Moss said. "Most were out on deep patrol when the attack started. The Zyraxians hit our bases first, so the ships in dock were destroyed." 17 ships against their entire fleet, Grace said. "We can't win." "We have to try," Moss said. "We'll gather everyone we can and make a stand at Earth. Maybe we can evacuate some people." William had been quiet studying the Zyraxian data. He suddenly looked up. "There might be another way." Everyone turned to him. "Look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. "The Zyraxians aren't just conquering us for resources. They're harvesting genetic material from technologically capable species. They use it to enhance their own evolution." "How does that help us?" Alan asked. "Because they've left themselves vulnerable," William continued. "Their biological technology depends on a quantum-linked communication system. It coordinates all their weapons and ships. If we could disrupt it, their entire military would collapse," Susan finished. Yes, but accessing that system requires genetic keys from their high commanders, William said. We'd need to capture one of them. You mean like Supreme Commander Vorox himself? Susan asked. William nodded slowly. Exactly like him. Admiral. Moss shook his head. That's impossible. He'll be on their command ship, surrounded by their entire fleet. Then we give him something he wants, Susan said. Us, he knows we stole data from them. He'll want to know what we took and who we told. You're suggesting we let ourselves be captured? Grace asked. No, Susan said. I'm suggesting we make them think they're capturing us, while we're actually hunting them. The plan took shape quickly. The remaining human fleet would attack the Xeraxian armada in a seemingly desperate last stand. During the battle, Susan's team would approach the Xeraxian command ship in their stolen shuttle, appearing to be damaged and fleeing. Once we're aboard, Alan explained, we use the security codes I copied to reach the command center. And if we get that far? Moss asked. We capture Vorox, Susan said. William takes the genetic samples we need. Then we use their own system against them. It was a desperate plan, probably suicidal, but no one had better ideas. While they prepared, more news arrived from Earth. Not all humans had died from the biological weapon. Some had natural immunity. They were fighting back against the Xeraxian ground forces. A message came through from a resistance leader named Olivia Martinez, a former Marine. Her face was dirty and there was blood on her uniform, but her eyes were fierce. We're hitting them where it hurts, she reported. They have better weapons, but they're physically weaker than us. In close combat, we can take them down. We've captured one of their communication stations. Whatever you're planning up there will help from down here. This gave everyone new hope. Humanity wasn't finished yet. Admiral Moss addressed the captains of all 17 ships. This is likely our final battle, he said. But we're not fighting just to survive now. We're fighting for retribution. The Xeraxians thought we would be easy prey like the other species they've harvested. They're about to learn why that was their last mistake. Susan's team prepared their equipment. Grace modified human weapons to better penetrate Xeraxian defenses. Alan studied their communication patterns to help coordinate the attack. William worked with the medical team to understand the biological samples they would need to collect. Do you think this can actually work? Alan asked Susan quietly as they checked their gear. Susan looked around at the small fleet, the last free ships of humanity, at the determined faces of the crew, preparing for what might be their final mission. It has to, she said. We're not just fighting for ourselves now. We're fighting for every species the Xeraxians have destroyed, and for every species they would destroy after us. She picked up her weapon, specially modified by Grace to kill Xeraxians quickly. They chose us because they thought we were weak, she said. That was their first mistake. Their last mistake was giving us nothing to lose. The human fleet moved into position. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Moss gave the order to begin the attack. The 17 human ships accelerated toward the Xeraxian armada orbiting Earth. Susan's team boarded their stolen shuttle. As they launched, Susan looked back at the Defiant. She wondered if she would ever see it again. Ready? She asked her team. They nodded, faces grim but determined. The shuttle sped toward the massive Xeraxian command ship at the center of their fleet. Behind them, the final battle for humanity began. The human fleet attacked the Xeraxian armada with everything they had. It was not enough. The Xeraxian ships were bigger, stronger, and there were many more of them. But the humans fought with desperation and fury. They needed to create enough chaos to hide what Susan and her team were doing. Susan's stolen shuttle moved toward the massive Xeraxian command ship. Alan had damaged the outside of the shuttle to make it look like it had been hit in battle. He had also changed its identification codes to match a Xeraxian scout ship. They're scanning us, he said as warning lights flashed on the control panel. Send the distress signal, Susan ordered. Alan pressed a button. The shuttle sent out a Xeraxian emergency code. They waited, watching as battles raged around them. Human ships exploded one after another, but they took Xeraxian vessels with them. Command ship responding, Alan said. They're opening a docking bay for us. The shuttle flew into the massive ship. It landed in a small bay away from the main hangar. Perfect. Fewer guards. Susan checked. Her weapon. Remember the plan. We move quickly, no stopping for anything. They left the shuttle. 2 Xeraxian guards approached. Before they could ask questions, Grace fired her sound weapon. The guards fell, clutching their heads. This way, Alan said, looking at a small device that showed the ship's layout. The command center is 5 levels up. They moved through service, corridors avoiding main hallways. Twice they had to hide from Xeraxian patrols. The ship shook occasionally from human attacks. Good. The battle was keeping most of the crew busy. They reached a secure elevator. Alan used the stolen codes to activate it. The doors opened. Too easy, Grace said. She was right. When the elevator stopped and the doors opened, 10 Xeraxian guards were waiting. They fired immediately. Susan ducked back into the elevator. Grace threw a small device into the corridor. It exploded with a flash of light and sound. The guards screamed, their sensitive eyes and ears overwhelmed. The team rushed forward. Grace took down 3 guards before they could recover. Alan and William each shot 1 more. Susan dealt with the rest. "We're making too much noise," Alan said. "Doesn't matter now," Susan replied. "They know we're here. We need to move faster." They ran through the corridors, no longer trying to stay hidden. Alarms blared throughout the ship. More guards appeared. Grace was hit in the arm by a Xeraxian weapon. She kept fighting. They reached a large door marked with the symbol of Xeraxian High Command. Alan placed explosives around the edges. "Get back," he shouted. The explosion blew the door open. They rushed in, weapons ready. Inside was the command center of the entire Xeraxian invasion. Officers worked at control stations. At the center stood Supreme Commander Calvorox. He was larger than other Xeraxians with red and gold scales. His 6 eyes widened in surprise. "Humans?" he said. "Here?" Guards rushed to protect him. Susan and her team fired. The guards fell. Xeraxian officers reached for weapons, but they were not soldiers. They died quickly. Only Calvorox remained standing. He drew his own weapon. "You dare to attack me, in the heart of my fleet?" "You attacked us first," Susan said. "You betrayed our trust." Calvorox laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Trust? You were never allies. You were cattle. Resources to be harvested, just like all the others." "The others fought back too?" Susan asked. "They tried," Calvorox said. "All species fight when they realize what's happening, but it's always too late, just as it is for you." More guards were trying to enter the command center. Grace and Alan held them back, firing at the doorway. William worked quickly at a control panel, downloading data. "Why do you do this?" Susan asked Calvorox. She needed to keep him talking while William worked. "Why not just trade with other species? Form real alliances?" "Because we are meant to evolve," Calvorox said. His voice was proud. "Each species we harvest gives us new genetic material, new adaptations. We become stronger with each conquest. Your human DNA will make excellent additions to our genome." "You won't get the chance," Susan said. Calvorox raised his weapon. "Your species is already dead. You just don't know it yet." He fired. Susan dove to the side. The shot missed. She rolled and fired back. Her shot hit Calvorox in the shoulder. He roared in pain but didn't fall. The ship shook violently. A human attack had hit something important. "Commander," William called, "I've got what we need." Susan nodded. William ran to Calvorox, who was distracted by his wound. William pressed a device against the Xeraxian's scales. It beeped as it collected genetic material. Calvorox realized what was happening. He grabbed William by the throat. "What are you doing?" Susan fired again. This time her shot hit Calvorox in the chest. He dropped William and staggered back. "Got it," William gasped, holding up the device. Grace shouted from the doorway. "We're out of time. More guards coming." Susan looked at the fallen Xeraxian commander. He wasn't dead, just wounded. She could kill him now. Part of her wanted to. But there was a better way to hurt him. "Let him live," she said. He should see what happens next. Alan looked at her in surprise. We're taking him with us? No, Susan said. We're leaving. William, do you have the data? William nodded. Everything. The genetic samples, the quantum link codes, all of it. Then let's go. Leaving Cal Vorox alive was a risk, but Susan wanted him to witness what they were about. To do to his species, they fought their way back through the ship. The corridors were filled with guards now. Grace was hit again, this time in the leg. She kept moving, leaning on Alan. When they reached a junction near the shuttle bay, Grace stopped. Go on, she said. I'll hold them here. Give you time to get to the shuttle. No, Susan said. We all go home. Grace shook her head. Look at me. I can't run, but I can still shoot. She held up her weapon. This is the only way any of us gets out. You know I'm right. Susan wanted to argue, but there was no time. And Grace was right. We'll come back for you, Susan said. Grace smiled. I know you will. Now go save humanity. Susan, Alan, and William ran toward the shuttle bay. Behind them, they heard Grace's weapon firing again and again. Then they heard her scream. They reached the shuttle and took off quickly. Zyraxian ships tried to stop them, but the battle outside provided cover. They flew toward the UES Defiant, dodging explosions and debris. William worked frantically at a console in the back of the shuttle, examining the data they had stolen. This is it, he said. If we can get this to the Defiant, we can create a countermeasure. We can turn their own biological weapons against them. Susan watched through the view screen as another human ship exploded. How many were left now? 10? 8? How long could they last? As they approached the Defiant, Susan felt a strange mix of hope and grief. They had what they needed to fight back, but at a terrible cost. Grace died for this, she said quietly. We can't waste her sacrifice. The shuttle landed in the Defiant's bay. Admiral Moss was waiting for them. Did you get it? He asked. William held up the device with Cal Vorox's genetic material. We got it, and more. We know how to beat them now. For the first time in days, Admiral Moss smiled. Then let's make them regret ever coming to Earth. William worked without stopping in the medical lab of the UES Defiant. His eyes were red from no sleep. His hands shook slightly. But he kept working. The future of humanity depended on what he was doing. The genetic material from Supreme Commander Cal Vorox was the key. William and the medical team studied it carefully. They discovered something important. The Zyraxians use their own DNA as a security key for their biological weapons. It's like a lock that only opens for them, William explained to Susan and Admiral Moss. Their biological weapons recognize Zyraxian DNA and ignore it. That's why they don't get sick from their own weapons. Can we use that against them? Susan asked. William nodded. We're creating a virus that travels through their quantum network. When it reaches their ships and weapons, it will change their targeting. Instead of attacking human DNA, it will attack Zyraxian DNA. They'll be killed by their own weapons, Admiral Moss said. Exactly. While William worked, Alan led a small team back to the Zyraxian command ship. They needed to rescue Grace if she was still alive, and they needed to set up the virus delivery. D'accord. Human fleet was down to just 9 ships now. They couldn't fight much longer, but they didn't need to win the battle anymore. They just needed to distract the Zyraxians a little longer. Alan's team found Grace. She was badly hurt but alive. The Zyraxians had captured her, thinking she might have useful information. They were wrong. Grace had told them nothing. I knew. You'd come back, she said weakly when Alan found her. They escaped in another stolen shuttle, flying back to the Defiant through the chaos of battle. More human ships had been destroyed. Only 7 remained now. On Earth, the human resistance led by Olivia Martinez was growing stronger. They had discovered that Zyraxian ground troops weren't good fighters. They relied too much on their technology. In close combat, humans were stronger and faster. The resistance had captured more Zyraxian communication stations. They were ready to help when the time came. William finally emerged from the lab, holding a small device. "It's ready," he said. "What does it do exactly?" Susan asked. "It's a targeted virus," William explained. "It will travel through the Xeraxians' own quantum network, the system that connects all their ships and weapons. Once inside, it will rewrite their biological weapons to target Xeraxian DNA instead of human." "How do we deliver it?" Admiral Moss asked. "We need to upload it to their main network," William said. "The best place is their command ship." Susan looked at Alan. "We need to go back." Alan nodded. "I know a way in. A maintenance hatch they don't guard well." "I'm coming too," Grace said. She was in a bed in the medical bay, but she had insisted on being part of the meeting. Susan shook her head. "You can't even walk." "Then give me a gun and put me somewhere I can shoot," Grace said. "I'm not sitting this one out." Admiral Moss ordered the human fleet to prepare for one final attack. Not to win, but to distract the Xeraxians long enough for Susan's team to deliver the virus. On Earth, Olivia Martinez and her resistance fighters prepared too. When they received the signal, they would upload the virus to every Xeraxian system they had captured. Susan's team returned to the Xeraxian command ship in a stolen maintenance vessel. Alan's information was correct. The small hatch was barely guarded. They slipped in easily. William carried the virus device. Grace, despite her injuries, insisted on coming. She moved slowly, leaning on Alan, but she was determined to finish what they had started. They reached a main computer terminal. William connected the device. "Uploading now," he said. "It will take a few minutes." Alarms suddenly sounded. They had been discovered. "Defend this position," Susan ordered. "William needs time." Xeraxian guards rushed toward them from both directions. Susan, Alan, and Grace fired their weapons. The narrow corridor worked in their favor, limiting how many Xeraxians could attack at once. Grace slumped against the wall, firing her weapon with one hand. Alan stood over her, protecting her as she fought. "Almost done," William said. The upload bar on his device was nearly complete. More Xeraxians came. Susan was hit in the shoulder. She kept fighting. Alan took a shot to the leg but stayed standing. "Done," William shouted. "It's in their system." Susan activated her communicator. "Admiral, the virus is delivered. Tell Earth to upload now." All across Earth, resistance fighters activated the virus upload and captured Xeraxian systems. The virus spread through the quantum network, jumping from ship to ship, from weapon to weapon. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Xeraxians kept fighting, not realizing what had changed in their systems. Then a Xeraxian soldier collapsed for no apparent reason. Then another and another. On their ships, crew members began to fall. Their biological weapons, now reprogrammed, were attacking them instead of humans. Supreme Commander Calvorox, recovered from his wounds, watched in horror from his command center as reports came in from every ship, every ground unit. His soldiers were dying. His weapons were killing his own people. Susan and her team fought their way back to their vessel. They escaped as the command ship fell into chaos. All around them, Xeraxian ships were going silent as their crews died. From the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Moss watched the Xeraxian fleet come apart. Ships drifted, no longer under control. Some crashed into each other. Others simply went dark. "It's working," he said. "The virus is spreading through their entire network." Susan's team returned to the Defiant. They were all wounded, but alive. They watched as the once mighty Xeraxian armada died. Calvorox established communication with the Defiant. His face appeared on the main screen. He looked sick, his scales turning gray. "What have you done?" he demanded. "We turned your weapons against you," Susan said. "Just like you turned our trust against us." "Mercy," Calvorox begged. "Some of our colonies have children. Innocents. Like the colonies you destroyed?" Susan asked. "The species you harvested? Did they beg for mercy too?" Calvorox had no answer. "The virus targets your military technology," Susan told him. "Your warships. your weapons, your soldiers. After what you've done, there will be no Zyraxian military left. Ever. Reports came in from across the galaxy. The virus had spread through the quantum network to every Zyraxian ship, every military base. Their war machine was collapsing everywhere. On Earth, Olivia Martinez reported that the Zyraxian ground forces were all dead or dying. Humans were reclaiming their cities, helping the wounded, beginning to rebuild. In the following weeks, humanity learned the full extent of what had happened. The Zyraxian military was gone. Their civilian populations, those not connected to military systems, had survived. But they would never again have the power to threaten another species. On Earth, a memorial was built listing the names of those lost in what became known as the Harvest War. Billions had died, but humanity had survived. Susan, now Admiral Walsh, stood with Alan, William, and Grace before the United Earth Council. The four of them had become symbols of humanity's resistance. We have evidence of other species the Zyraxians previously attacked, Susan told the council. Some may still exist, reduced to pre-technology levels. I propose we find them, help them rebuild, form a true alliance. The council agreed. Human ships would seek out these lost species, offering friendship and aid. Never conquest or betrayal. As Susan left the council chambers, she passed a new monument. It showed a simple human hand, reaching up to the stars. Below it were words that summed up humanity's new purpose. We rose from the ashes. We will help others rise too. The betrayal of humanity had been the Zyraxians' last mistake. The retribution had been swift, and the renewal that followed would change the galaxy forever.